Hi guys, Metal Maniac back again, and in this video I'm going to be listing off the top 10 most overrated metal albums. Now, before I begin, I do want to mention that the lowest stuff on the list are actually good to okay albums. They just get more credit than they deserve, but the stuff that's higher on the list are legitimately terrible albums that people for some reason think are the best things ever. But yeah. With that, let's begin. Alright. At number 10 is Power Slave by Iron Maiden. Not a terrible album, actually a pretty good album. Even a solid album, but people act like this is the best Iron Maiden album out there, and it's not. It's good, but it's not the greatest Iron Maiden album. I mean, it does have some significant flaws. I mean, first off, the middle section of the album is very, very, very boring. Like, songs from, Lost for Words all the way to Back in the Village. The whole middle section of this album is pretty terrible. The other thing that makes this album good but not great is, I mean, this album feels like they just were trying too hard with this album. Like, they were, instead of actually, I guess, somewhat in a way of not actually trying to make, just a good album, but they're trying to make, trying to make something that would be the best thing they've ever done, which is not necessarily bad, but, I think they went a little bit overboard with that. But yeah, I mean, this good album, but not the best thing they've ever done, like most people say. But yeah, Power Slave by Iron Maiden is at number 10. Alright, number 9. Number 9 is Fatal Portrait by King Diamond. This album does have some really awesome highlights. Like the songs The Cradle, Charon, Halloween, and Haunted. I mean, yeah, I've kind of grown to like the last song on the album, but here's the thing, those are really the only good songs on the album. Everything else is sort of just meh. So, even though, yeah, people say that, there are a lot of people that say that that Fatal Portrait is the best King Diamond album, but then, again, there's the other side of the argument where people say that Abigail is the best King Diamond album. Now, I can't really, I mean, I can say that, yeah, I don't think this is the greatest King Diamond album. In fact, I'm pretty sure if I listen to the rest of their discography, this will still rank pretty low, in, their discography in terms of, what I think is, worst best. But, I mean, not to say that this is a terrible album, it's just sort of a very mixed bag of good and forgettable songs. But yeah, it's just sort of meh. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's definitely not the best thing they've ever done. But yeah, it's at number 9. Alright. At number 8. At number 8 is... The Headless Children by Wasp. I mean, where is it? Rebel in the FTG is a great song, but everything else is forgettable. People who love the band Wasp, I know I love the band Wasp, but a lot of Wasp fans say that this or the Crimson Idol is the best album. No, people say either this is the best album, but then there are some people say that Crimson Idol is the best album, and then there are some people that say that their first album is the best album. Now, out of all the arguments, I think the arguments to this being the best album is the weakest, and because it is 99% forgettable, other than Rebel in the FTG, that's a great song. But yeah, I mean, it's just sort of meh. The album's just meh. but yeah, so this is The Headless Children by Wasp is at number 8. All right, at number 7. Number 7 is here we go. At number 7 is Cause of Death by Obituary. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just, in my opinion, there are so many other Obituary albums that are way, way, way better. I mean, slowly we rot, or I don't know. I always keep I always keep messing up the title of the first album. It's Slowly We Rot. I don't know, for some reason that always that always gets me messed up with that. Anyway, but yeah, slowly rot, and then like basically any other, like majority of other Obituary albums are way better than this one. I don't know. This just feels like they just put something out to put something out. I guess. Finally Arise, Cause of Death, Memories to Remain, and Turned Inside Out are pretty good, but that doesn't mean that this is the best Obituary album. I don't know why people say it is. It's just sort of, I mean, the second half is actually, it's actually pretty good, but nothing to give an award to, you know. But yeah. All right, at number 6. All right. At number 6 is State of Euphoria by Anthrax. Yeah, it's very forgettable. Yet a lot of people say that this is their best album. Or people say that Spreading the Disease is their best album, which I mean, I don't think it's their best. Spreading the Disease is their best album, but I wouldn't just wholeheartedly disagree that it's a fantastic, not fantastic, but a pretty good album. Whereas this one, when people say that this is the best Anthrax album, I kind of look at them like, really? I never really got that impression from it. Like, it is entirely, well, I mean, there may be a few moments and a few songs here and there that are pretty good, I guess. But overall, I mean, compared to, I mean, yeah, okay, here's the thing. Compared to the other two I have listened to, like, yeah, I've listened to, like, their first album, their second album, this is their fourth album, I believe. I've listened to like 3 albums from Anthrax, and out of the 3 that I have heard, this is definitely the lesser of the ones that I've heard. It's I don't know. It's just I don't think it could stand up to the ones that I have heard before, and I don't know. I mean, it's just sort of meh. I mean, I don't know. It's just sort of a meh compared to the other 2 I have heard. I mean, the other 2 I've heard besides this one. But yeah. All right. All right, at number 5. Hold on. I have a list here. All right. Yep, there it is. All right. At number 5 is the album "Human" by Death. By far their most overrated album. Oh, I mean, it's either this or Individual Thought Patterns, but I mean, Individual Thought Patterns I think is a little bit more to it in terms of reasons why people like it. I mean, I don't really like it, but I could understand why people like that album. But I can't understand why people like this album. It's just, I don't know. It just doesn't fit. The rest of the albums, like, I don't know. It's a very odd album. It is very boring. Really, the only song that I enjoy is the cover of God of Thunder. But, I mean, the main album itself is just sort of dull and forgettable. but there are people that say this is the best Death album, and I wholeheartedly disagree on that. This is one of, if not the worst. It's just extremely boring, forgettable, and it just, I don't know, just every time I listen to this, I just want to fall asleep because it's so boring. Um, but yeah, it's at number 5. Yeah, it's at number 5. Um, all right, at number 4. Number 4, is one that I don't own, that I have heard before. Number 4 is Master of Reality by Black Sabbath. Yeah, I know that's kind of blasphemous to say, especially with Black Sabbath fans, but, I mean, I don't like Ozzy's vocals. I think Ozzy is probably one of the most overrated metal vocalists. I think he's one of the worst too. Like, his vocals are just so annoying. Um, I mean, here's the thing though. The first time I ever heard anything from Black Sabbath was the song Iron Man. I think he was great on that, but everything else I've heard is just sort of, ugh, I don't know. Ugh. But Masters of Reality, besides Ozzy's annoying vocals, I think is a decent album. If you ignore Ozzy singing, it's a decent album. But people say it's their best album, and yeah, it's definitely not. At least from what I think is their best album, which I won't I won't say that what I think is their best album or what is one of the best, because I am planning to do a top 10. I mean, not top 10. A ranking of the Black Sabbath albums eventually. So, but it is definitely not their best album by far. I think it's a decent album, other than Ozzy's horrible vocals. But yeah, it's just a very overrated album, and just wrongfully praised as their best. But yeah. Um, At number 3 is another album I don't own, but I have heard before. Number 3, what I consider the third most overrated metal album, is Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche. The band itself is sort of overrated. I mean, the vocalist is, I'd argue, even more annoying than Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know what it is. It's just the vocal. I mean, especially on this album, for some bizarre reason, the album is boring. The songwriting is haphazard. It's supposed to be a concept album, yet it just feels like something that was just thrown together at the last minute. The instrumentation is sloppy. Like, everything is wrong with this album, yet people say it's the best album ever, or people even say it's the best concept album ever. No, it is a legitimately terrible album that for some reason people think is great. But yeah, it's just a really, really terrible, terrible album that, yeah. But yeah, that's at number 3. At number 2, hold on. There we go. At number 2 is Rain in Blood by Slayer. The song Raining Blood is great, but that's about it. Every other song on this album is boring, forgettable, and is so boring, and like the rest of the songs are so boring and forgettable that they clump together and sound pretty much the same, to the point where even when I'm paying attention, like, I still can't tell the difference between what song's what, because that's how clumped together they are, because they're so boring and just, they sound pretty much the same. Um, this is this is probably one of my least favorite Slayer albums. Um, I don't know. I mean, I was very hyped for this album, but then when I listened to it, I'm just like, why do people say this is the best Slayer album? It's not. It's far from that. Um, yeah, I mean, and it's far from being the best thrash album or the best metal album overall. It's just sort of, I don't know. I don't know why people think this is so good when it's just sort of bleh. But yeah. Alright. And number one is number one. Okay, I used to own this one, but I sort of gave it away. At number one, what I consider the most overrated metal album ever is Master of Puppets by Metallica. Oh boy, do people praise this album to death. Um, I mean, Metallica, in my opinion, is one of the worst metal bands. That people for some reason say is so great. Um, I mean, their first two albums were decent. I think their first two albums, Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning, are decent. I actually do enjoy like the first like 3 or 4 songs off of Ride the Lightning. But Master of Puppets one is clearly where you can hear that they sold out. And are just playing more commercial music. And as their discography continued, more and more of the albums became more and more commercial, more and more, I guess, technically, I guess in a way, radio friendly, to the point where they just weren't really playing to play good music anymore, but play to still be hip and relevant. And oh, look at this, we can be played on the radio. Oh, we're so great. Um, but yeah, it all goes back to the album. It all started with the album Master of Puppets, which is again the most overrated metal album of all time. It's not good. The songs are just boring. The instrumentation is show offy, like very very much show offy. Like, oh look at me, I could do this. Oh look at me, I could do this. You know, it's just a really terrible, haphazardly made, commercially intended album that is just horrible. Yet for some people, but for some reason, people think it's the greatest thing ever. But yeah, it's not. It is so not. But yeah. So that was my list of the top 10 most overrated metal albums. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.